Hi friends, happy spring party. Here's your watercolor activity for the day. I won't take up much time, just wanted to give you a few tips and tricks to get you started. So you can see here, I've done something called wet on wet, and this I've done wet on dry. So wet on wet means I took clean water and I wet my paper in an area. So I'm adding water. Don't worry, the paper is pretty strong. It shouldn't buckle too much with water. Now you're going to choose any color you want. I'll do a little bit of blue. And when you put the color on there, it spreads out, which is really fun. You give it like a tie-dye effect. I'm gonna clean my brush. If you do have 2 cups, you could do 1 rinse in 1 cup and then a second rinse, and it can just help everything stay clean. I'm gonna go to a next door neighbor color. So my blue is here, my next door neighbor color is green. Those colors are gonna mix well together. So any color that's next door neighbor colors should mix well. Just a really fun little thing to know is that when you do that wet on wet, you get that tie-dye look. So that's one way to do it, and you can obviously fill in the whole thing. When you do wet on dry, your paper's dry. So here's my tip. This area right here, I already used wet paint on dry paper. So now it's dry. That's good because if you notice, watercolors, they're just like you guys. They're great friends. They like to mix it up. So if you don't want your watercolors to mix, you're gonna wanna make sure that an area is dry before you paint next door. So now that I made sure that that area is dry, so this is all dry right here, now I can use wet paint on dry paper and I can start to fill that in. You might notice that my egg is cut out. If you would like to cut your egg out, you can do it first, or you can wait until it's dry and then you can cut it out. So this wet on dry technique might be great for areas like on your flowers. You can do both. You can do one. If you're not into that, do the egg. If you're not into the egg, do the flowers, or you can do both. I'm gonna rinse, do another one. So this technique for the wet on dry might be good for this right here. Go ahead and paint all your green areas. Let those dry. So this area is green. When I move on to this, doesn't matter if it mixes because it's green, so they can go together. But see how this green is touching this flower right here? You'd want to wait for this green to dry before you go to move on to red, because when red and green mix together, they don't make the best color. So a little bit of a crash course in watercolor. Don't want to take up too much of your time so you guys can get to it. So wet on wet creates that tie-dye effect. Wet paint on dry paper, a little bit more precise. Just make sure that your areas are dry before you move on to the next section. And also, don't forget, when you do the wet on wet, you want to make sure that those are next door neighbor colors. So you want to think about maybe sticking to the cool colors or the warm colors, and you'll have a really fun effect. Thanks for being such a great class. It's been a really, really awesome time to get to know you guys. Have a great spring break. Enjoy.